Here's the brutal truth. Most people will never realize who they truly are. Not because they're incapable, not because they lack intelligence or opportunity, but because they're too afraid to face what lies beneath the surface of their own minds. They're terrified of what they might discover if they ever pulled off the carefully constructed mask they've worn their entire lives. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who dared to look deeper than anyone else, said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that for a second. The majority of your life may not even be yours. It may be a collection of unconscious habits, patterns, fears, and inherited beliefs that were never examined, never questioned, never understood. You think you're making choices, but you're really just reacting. You think you're evolving, but you're just surviving. You think you're free, but you're a prisoner of your own unexamined mind. Modern society doesn't help. It rewards the persona, the mask. It loves the image, the polish, the projection of perfection. We are trained from childhood to hide our anger, to bury our desires, to avoid discomfort, to shut the door on anything that might make others uncomfortable. But in doing so, we shut the door on the deepest parts of ourselves. We become strangers to our own souls. We live as ghosts, not humans. Carl Jung offered a different path, a darker path, a harder path, but a real one. His philosophy wasn't about happiness or positivity, it was about wholeness. He believed that if you wanted to truly awaken, if you wanted to live a life that was fully yours, you had to confront your shadow. You had to explore the parts of yourself that you've spent your entire life avoiding. You had to descend into your own personal underworld, not to stay there, but to bring back the truth you left behind. This video is not about motivation. It's about transformation. It's not here to inspire you. It's here to provoke you, to disturb you, to challenge everything you think you know about who you are. Because until you're willing to face your deepest fears, your truest self will remain locked away in the unconscious. And you'll continue calling your cage destiny. And the worst part? They'll call it normal. Carl Jung didn't believe in the comfortable lie. He believed in the terrifying, liberating, soul-shattering truth. Jung wasn't interested in what the world told you to be. He wanted to know, who are you really? Behind the job title, behind the relationships, beneath the childhood traumas and the adult insecurities, who is your true self? Today, we're diving into the depths of Jungian philosophy to answer one life-defining question. How do you realize your true potential? Not just achieve success, not just feel happy, but become whole. This is not a motivational speech. This is a psychological excavation. You won't leave with hype, you'll leave with a mirror. Let's begin. In his early career, Jung worked closely with Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. At first, their ideas harmonized. They both believed the unconscious held the key to human behavior. But soon a rupture grew. Freud saw the unconscious as a cesspool of repressed desires, mostly sexual in nature. Jung disagreed. He believed the unconscious was much more than a storehouse of shame. It was a vast realm of creative power, myth, memory, and truth. To Jung, the unconscious wasn't just a place you buried things you didn't want to see. It was the birthplace of who you really are. Breaking from Freud, Jung went on to develop what he called analytical psychology. He introduced revolutionary ideas that would reshape not just psychotherapy, but philosophy, art, literature, and even pop culture. Words like persona, shadow, archetype, collective unconscious, anima, and individuation weren't just academic concepts. They were keys to understanding the depth of human nature. When you watch a film like Star Wars or The Matrix, you're watching Jung's legacy unfold. The hero's journey, the dark mentor, the confrontation with the self. These aren't just storytelling devices. They are psychological truths embedded in the human psyche. What makes Jung essential to your journey of personal growth is his core belief in potential. He wasn't obsessed with fixing what's broken. He was obsessed with uncovering what's hidden. He didn't just want people to feel better. He wanted them to become whole. That's what sets him apart. Freud wanted to tame the beast. Jung wanted to understand it and integrate it. Jung saw every human being as an unfinished project, a mystery in progress. He believed that the most important work anyone could do was to confront their unconscious, to meet their shadow, embrace their contradictions, and strive toward what he called individuation, the process of becoming your truest, most complete self. His work wasn't just therapy. It was alchemy for the soul, a spiritual science for transformation, a roadmap for those brave enough to journey inward. Carl Jung's entire philosophy orbits around one central idea, the self. But the self, in Jungian terms, is not what most people think it is. It's not your personality, your job title, your Instagram bio, or your daily habits. That's your ego. The thin surface layer of your psyche, the part of you that interacts with the world and keeps things functioning. The ego says, I am this, and I'm not that. It draws lines. It sets boundaries. It helps you survive. But survival is not the same as becoming. And Jung didn't care about survival. He cared about transformation. To Jung, the ego is important, but it's not the whole story. It's a character in a play written by something much deeper, more ancient, and more powerful, the self. The self is the totality of who you are, both known and unknown. It includes everything you've admitted to yourself and everything you've refused to look at. It holds the opposites, the contradictions, the beauty, and the terror. It is the divine spark in you, buried under years of conditioning, fear, shame, and cultural programming. The self is not something you are automatically. It is something you must become. And the road to becoming the self is dangerous, because you will have to walk through the parts of yourself you were trained to avoid. Your wounds, your rage, your lust, your envy, your insecurities, your ambitions. Jung called this journey individuation, the process of becoming whole. And that wholeness isn't about perfection. It's about integration. Jung believed that within the psyche live certain universal patterns, archetypes, that all humans experience in some form. They are like internal characters that shape how you think, feel, dream, and act. The persona is the first of these, a mask you wear to fit in, to be liked, to appear strong or successful. Is what you show the world. But behind that mask lives the shadow, the parts of yourself you deny or disown. Then there's the anima or animus, the feminine side of a man, the masculine side of a woman, psychic energies that balance and deepen your consciousness. And then at the center of all these archetypes lies the self, the orchestrator of the psyche's symphony. The problem is modern life teaches us to inflate the persona and suppress everything else. Social media becomes a carnival of carefully curated masks. Positivity becomes toxic when it refuses to acknowledge pain. We become addicted to appearing okay. But underneath, we're fragmented, confused, and disconnected. Jung didn't offer an escape. He offered confrontation. His vision was not to make you more comfortable, it was to make you more real. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. But that privilege is not granted freely. It's earned through self-examination, inner conflict, and a willingness to sacrifice the person you think you are for the person you were meant to be. Because you're not meant to stay who you are. You're meant to evolve. And not into some sanitized, socially acceptable version of success, but into something far more dangerous. Something terrifyingly authentic. That's the self. And meeting it changes everything. Let's talk about the part of you that you pretend doesn't exist. The part you hide from others and from yourself. The part you'd rather ignore than investigate. That's your shadow. Carl Jung defined the shadow as everything within us that is unconscious, repressed, and denied. It's not just your darkness, it's your depth. It's the anger you suppress in order to appear nice. The sexual desires you push down to stay pure. The ambition you kill to avoid being too much. But the shadow isn't just composed of socially unacceptable impulses. Sometimes your brilliance lives in the shadow. Your power, your creativity, your voice, all buried under years of conditioning. Because somewhere along the way you were taught to disown it. The problem is, the shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. In fact, what you refuse to face gains power over you. As Jung warned, what you resist persists. What you bury doesn't die, it controls you. This is why the calmest person in the room can explode in rage. Why does the most cheerful person you know silently resent everyone? This is why people snap. Because what we don't integrate eventually erupts. Facing the shadow is not about becoming evil. It's about becoming whole. You're not here to be a saint. You're here to be a full-spectrum human being, capable of love and rage, compassion and power. Integration doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse. It means acknowledging them, understanding them, and transforming them into something constructive. Rage can become passion. Envy can become inspiration. Fear can become awareness. But only if you stop pretending it's not there. Shadow work is the brutal, beautiful process of self-confrontation. It's looking in the mirror when you'd rather look away. It's asking, what parts of me am I ashamed of? What am I projecting onto others? What do I judge in them that I secretly hate in myself? Jung said we often meet our shadow in projections. The things we despise in others are usually a reflection of what we deny in ourselves. That's why we're so triggered. The world becomes our mirror and we spend our lives fighting what's really inside us. Jung also believed that dreams were the language of the shadow. When you dream of chaos, violence, or wild animals, it's not nonsense. It's the shadow trying to speak, trying to be heard, trying to come home. Because ultimately, the shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to rejoin you, to serve you. Think of Darth Vader, not just as a villain but as a metaphor. He represents the part of the hero that could not be integrated, the part banished to darkness. And only by facing him, by confronting the shadow, does Luke Skywalker begin to understand who he really is. That's not just mythology. That's psychology. Jungian psychology. But this isn't just about movies or metaphors. This is about your life. It's about the colleague who seems too aggressive, but really just reminds you of your own silenced assertiveness. It's about the person you mock for being attention-seeking, when you've spent your whole life feeling invisible. It's about that quiet guy at the office who, after years of bottling up resentment, explodes and shocks everyone. That's what happens when the shadow is ignored for too long. It doesn't go away, it takes over. So how do you begin to work with your shadow? You journal your dreams. You pay attention to your triggers. You get curious about what you hate. You stop pretending to be good and start aiming to be whole. Because enlightenment, Jung said, doesn't come from imagining figures of light, but from making the darkness conscious. In the end, the shadow is not your enemy. It's your gateway. It's the threshold you must cross if you want to stop living a half-life. If you want to stop being a mask and start becoming a soul. Shadow work is not comfortable, but it is freedom. Because when you reclaim the parts of yourself that you've rejected, you stop being controlled by them. You become real. And in that realness you find power. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the mask you wear to survive the social world. It's the role you play, the image you project, the behavior you perform so you can be accepted, praised, respected, or at the very least left alone. It starts early. You learn which parts of yourself are approved and which are punished. So you adapt. You become the funny one, the smart one, the pretty one, the responsible one. And it works for a while. You get friends, jobs, applause. But what no one tells you is that the mask begins to eat your face. Over time, the persona becomes a prison. You forget who you were before you started performing. You laugh when you don't feel joy. You agree when you want to scream. You smile through the burnout, afraid that taking off the mask will make you unlovable. And the worst part? The world starts to love the mask. Not you. Just the role you play. Jung warned of this danger. The persona is a system of behavior put in place to adapt to society, but the danger is identifying with it. When you confuse the mask for your identity, you cut yourself off from your soul. You become a well-liked ghost. Look around and you'll see it everywhere. The high achiever who checks every box, wins every award, but lies awake at night feeling hollow. The overworked, reliable one, who's silently drowning because they don't know how to say no. The influencer who's mastered the algorithm but lost touch with their actual desires. They're all suffering the same split. Their outer mask no longer matches their inner truth. That's the birthplace of imposter syndrome, the pain of living as a performance. Here's a challenge. What mask are you wearing right now, and what truth is it hiding? Are you acting confident to mask fear? Acting selfless to hide resentment? Acting tough to cover deep wounds? The persona isn't evil. It's a tool. A necessary adaptation to live in a society. But it must be held loosely. It must be worn, not welded to your identity. When you mistake it for the real you, you slowly start to die. Because the soul cannot breathe through plastic. True liberation begins the moment you take the mask off and realize the person underneath was more than enough all along. Now we arrive at the heart of Jungian philosophy, the path he believed every human being is born to walk. Individuation. What is it? In simple terms, individuation is the psychological and spiritual process of becoming your true self. Not the self society told you to be. Not the self your parents dreamed of. Not the self you pretend to be on LinkedIn. But the full, integrated, terrifyingly authentic self that was buried the moment you started to conform. Individuation is not self-improvement. It's not about becoming better, it's about becoming whole. It means gathering the broken pieces of yourself. The mask you wear, the darkness you repress, the qualities you project, the wounds you carry, and integrating them into a single, unified identity. One that is raw, real, and radically alive. The journey of individuation unfolds in stages. First, you confront the persona. You realize the role you've been playing is just that, a role. You strip away the socially approved mask and begin asking, if I weren't performing, who would I be? Then comes the shadow. You descend into the parts of yourself you've denied, rage, envy, desire, fear, and begin to face them not as enemies but as orphaned fragments of your wholeness. Next, you meet the Anima or Animus, your inner opposite. Men awaken their repressed femininity, empathy, receptivity, vulnerability. Women integrate their buried masculinity, assertiveness, clarity, independence. These energies don't make you less of who you are, they make you more. Finally, if you survive the descent, you arrive at the self, the totality of your being. And at this point, you're no longer performing life. You're living it. Jung's map of individuation mirrors the hero's journey described by Joseph Campbell, who was deeply influenced by Jung. You start in the ordinary world, get a call to adventure, often through a crisis. You descend into the unknown, meet your inner monsters, and, if you survive, you return with the elixir: wisdom, integration, purpose. Jung used the symbolism of alchemy to describe this transformation. The Negrito, or blackening, represents the descent into the shadow, the breakdown of the false self. Then, slowly, through inner work, clarity emerges. A new self is forged in the fire. Let's make it real. Picture a man raised by a strict, high-achieving father. He becomes a lawyer, not because he loves it, but because he was taught that success equals status. He earns money, buys a house, wears a suit. But something's off. He's numb. Burnout. One day, during a health scare, he breaks down. He goes on a silent retreat. He writes. He reflects. He finally admits, this life was never mine. He quit law. He becomes a creative coach. Now he helps others find their voice. That's individuation, not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. Jung said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. Individuation means breaking generational patterns. It means letting go of inherited expectations and discovering what your soul actually wants. And that journey isn't romantic, it's brutal. You'll lose people. You'll disappoint others. You'll question everything. But what you gain is irreplaceable, yourself. Because in a world that teaches you to fit in, individuating is a revolutionary act. You leave the safety of the herd. You walk into the wilderness of your own psyche. You suffer. You heal. You awaken. And one day you look in the mirror, and you recognize the face staring back. Individuation is not for the faint of heart. It's for those who are tired of pretending, tired of chasing someone else's dream, tired of living small. It's a path full of solitude, struggle, and silence. But at the end of that road is your soul, and it has been waiting for you. Inside every man is a woman. Inside every woman, a man. No, this isn't about gender or sexuality. This is Jung's theory of psychic wholeness, the belief that each of us carries an inner opposite. For a man, this unconscious feminine aspect is the anima. For a woman, the hidden masculine is the animus. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They shape the way we think, love, and suffer. They are the lost halves of our psyche, and if we don't reclaim them, they'll rule us from the shadows. The anima is a man's gateway to his soul. She's his capacity for vulnerability, intuition, emotion, receptivity, and creativity. When denied, he becomes hardened, outwardly strong but inwardly brittle. He may obsess over idealized women, fall into toxic patterns, or struggle to form deep emotional connections. He projects his soul onto a woman and demands she carry it. The animus in a woman is her force of logic, direction, action, and strength. When repressed, she may become passive, disconnected from her power, or overly compliant. When overactive, she may become overly critical or domineering. She too may project her inner masculine onto men, falling for cold, controlling figures who mirror her unclaimed authority. Jung believed that integration, not denial, is the key. When a man meets and embraces his anima, he becomes balanced, empathetic, alive. When a woman befriends her animus, she becomes grounded, confident. It's all around us in storytelling. Elsa, from Frozen, awakens her animus, not in the form of a man, but in claiming her own voice and direction. Simba, in The Lion King, loses his anima in exile, his intuition, his sense of purpose, only to reconnect with it through Nala and the memory of his father. Our culture suffers from polarity collapse. Men are taught to kill softness. Women are taught to fear their power. The result? Toxic masculinity, fragile femininity, shallow relationships. Jung's message? You find your true self not just in power, but in tenderness. Not just in control, but in surrender. Ask yourself, what part of yourself have you been taught to hide because it didn't fit the script for your gender? That's where your shadow lives. And that's where your healing begins. You spend 1/3 of your life asleep, and during that time, something ancient speaks to you. Jung believed that dreams are not random. They are messages, symbols from the deepest parts of your unconscious, sent to guide your evolution. While Freud reduced dreams to repressed desires, Jung saw them as compass needles of the soul, offering direction when your conscious mind is lost. Every dream is symbolic. It's not about what it looks like. It's about what it means. In Jungian language, water represents emotion or the unconscious. Are you drowning? Floating? Crossing a river? Your soul is showing you how you're navigating your inner world. Death doesn't mean literal death. It signals transformation. Something inside you is ending so something new can be born. A house is the self. Different rooms represent different parts of your psyche. Is the house falling apart? Is there a hidden basement? Your dream is pointing to neglected aspects of your identity. Here's the punchline. Most people ignore their dreams. They wake up, brush them off, and miss the gold. But your dream life is the unfiltered truth. It's your unconscious screaming at you in images because your waking self refuses to listen. Ever had a recurring dream? That's your psyche pulling the fire alarm over and over, hoping you'll finally pay attention. Ask yourself, what recurring dream have I ignored? Because it might be your soul trying to scream its way into consciousness. Jung didn't believe in quick dream interpretations. He believed in reflection, not reduction. The question isn't what does this dream mean, but rather, what is this dream trying to tell me about who I am? Start a dream journal. Write your dreams as soon as you wake up. Don't analyze, just observe. Patterns will emerge. Your unconscious will open up. And the more you listen, the more it speaks. Because in dreams, your soul finally has a voice. Here's the punchline. Most people ignore their dreams. They wake up, brush them off, and miss the gold. But your dream life is the unfiltered truth. It's your unconscious screaming at you in images because your waking self refuses to listen. Ever had a recurring dream? That's your psyche pulling the fire alarm over and over, hoping you'll finally pay attention. Ask yourself, what recurring dream have I ignored? Because it might be your soul trying to scream its way into consciousness. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is everywhere in modern pop culture. You just might not have realized it. But once you do, you'll see it in the characters you're drawn to, the stories that haunt you, and even the memes you laugh at. The shadow, the unconscious, repressed, morally ambiguous parts of ourselves, is the secret sauce behind some of the most compelling characters ever created. But here's the critical lesson. The point of shadow work is not to become the villain. It's to recognize that you could be. To stop pretending you're purely good, purely moral, or purely innocent. Because pretending only strengthens the shadow's grip. You're not meant to become evil, but if you don't face the evil within, it will find its own way out. Understanding Jungian philosophy is fascinating, but it's useless if it doesn't touch your daily life. Jung wasn't writing for academics. He was writing for you. For anyone brave enough to do the inner work of becoming whole. So, how do you start? Begin with the shadow. Every emotion you suppress, every behavior you judge harshly in others, every impulse you shame in yourself, that's where the shadow lives. So start journaling. Not with fluffy affirmations, but with brutal honesty. Ask yourself, what part of myself do I hate the most? What do I envy in others? What am I afraid others will discover about me? These questions hurt, but they also crack the mask. Be mindful of when you're wearing your persona, the polished version of yourself designed to win approval. The more conscious you are of your mask, the less likely you are to confuse it for your real identity. In close relationships, practice revealing your raw, unfiltered self. That doesn't mean trauma dumping. It means being honest when it's uncomfortable. That's soul building. Your dreams are another gold mine. According to Jung, dreams aren't nonsense. They're symbolic messages from your unconscious. Keep a dream journal. Don't Google meanings. Instead, ask, what emotions did I feel? What personal associations do I have with these symbols? A house might not mean the same thing to you as it does to a stranger. The wisdom is personal. Try active imagination. It's a technique Jung developed to engage the unconscious in dialogue. Close your eyes. Picture a figure from a dream or even an inner conflict. Then speak to it. Let it speak back. Yes, it's strange, but it unlocks parts of your psyche modern life has no language for. And then there's synchronicity. Jung believed in meaningful coincidences, events that feel fated or significant, though logically unrelated. Pay attention to those moments. They're like psychic breadcrumbs, guiding you toward inner alignment. Also, think archetypically. Ask yourself, what archetype am I living right now? The warrior? The orphan? The magician? Each one carries its own strengths, fears, and tasks. Knowing your current archetype gives clarity to your chaos. Finally, understand this. Real transformation doesn't feel like a motivational high. It feels like grief, loss, death. Because something has to die, your false self. But what's born in its place? Something untouchable. Something real. Don't chase potential through trends, gurus, or viral content. Chase it through the sacred hellfire of your own unconscious. That's where your true power lives. Let's stop pretending life is light and love and likes. The truth is most people are spiritual corpses. Perfectly polite, socially approved, totally asleep. They follow the scripts written by parents, culture, religion, and algorithms. They smile while their soul quietly rots. Carl Jung didn't just offer philosophy. He offered resurrection. A roadmap out of numbness and into individuation. The painful, raw, liberating process of becoming who you really are. But this path is not for the faint of heart. You will cry. You will rage. You will feel shame, terror, emptiness. And then, you will awaken. For the first time, your choices won't come from trauma or trend, but from self. Most people won't take that journey. They'll binge shows about antiheroes, post quotes about growth, and say things like, everything happens for a reason, while hiding from the one reason that actually matters. They're afraid of who they could become. So here's your challenge. Right now, ask yourself, am I living my life or someone else's? Am I moving from truth or from fear? Because if you don't face yourself now, life will eventually force you to. Through breakdown, divorce, burnout, loss. And by then, the cost will be greater. But if you start today, if you take even one step inward, your life will no longer be on autopilot. It will be yours, lit from within. As Jung said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. So stop dreaming. Wake up. It's time.